My sister humiliated my pregnant girlfriend at our baby shower, calling her a gold digger in front of everyone. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Ethan, I'm 28 years old, and I've been with my girlfriend Madison, who is now my fiancée, for 3 years. We recently found out we were expecting a baby, and I couldn't have been happier. I proposed not long after, and she said yes. To celebrate, my family planned a baby shower. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of our lives. My sister Olivia, who is 31, has always been protective of me. Sometimes that protectiveness crossed the line and turned into controlling behavior, but I never thought it would go this far. The day of the baby shower started perfectly. We had decorations, food, friends, and family gathered to celebrate our little one. Madison looked beautiful, glowing with happiness, and I felt proud to stand by her side. But things took a turn when Olivia started throwing out sly little comments toward Madison. At first, it was subtle, remarks about her background or about how quickly things had moved between us. Then, out of nowhere, she stood up in front of everyone and said Madison was nothing but a gold digger, that she was using me for my stable job and savings. The room went silent. Madison's smile disappeared instantly, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. She left the room, embarrassed and crushed, while people awkwardly whispered and avoided eye contact. I felt frozen in that moment. Part of me wanted to scream at Olivia, but I stood there, stunned. Later, when I found Madison crying at home, my heart broke. She told me she felt like my family would never accept her, and that I hadn't defended her when she needed me the most. She was right. I promised her I would make it right, no matter what it took. The next day, I confronted Olivia. She didn't back down. She insisted she was only protecting me, and even claimed she had proof Madison was interested in my money. Her proof was that Madison once asked about my salary and that she came from a modest background. I reminded Olivia how Madison had stood by me when I lost my job for 6 months, paid her share of bills without complaint, and even sacrificed her own plans so we could save for our future together. Olivia didn't want to hear it. That was my breaking point. I told my parents I wouldn't allow anyone, even my sister, to disrespect the woman I loved. My dad supported me, but my mom begged me not to split the family apart. I realized then that protecting Madison and our baby was my top priority. Family doesn't mean enabling cruelty. It means loyalty and respect. Looking back, Olivia thought she was exposing Madison, but in the end, she only exposed herself. I chose Madison because real love is proven through actions, not words. The baby shower began like something out of a dream. Balloons floated above the tables, pastel colors filled the room, and wrapped gifts piled high in the corner. Friends laughed over plates of food. Family members caught up with one another, and the air carried a warmth I thought would last the entire afternoon. Madison looked radiant, surrounded by people congratulating her, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Then small cracks appeared. Olivia, my sister, lingered close to Madison, making remarks that seemed harmless at first but carried a sharp edge. She commented on the dress Madison wore, questioning whether it was a little too fancy for the occasion. She asked loudly if Madison had already started planning what she'd buy with the registry money. Each line was delivered with a smile, but her tone had weight, and Madison's own smile wavered. The chatter around us carried on until Olivia's voice cut through it all. Without warning, she raised her tone and spat out the words that would change the day entirely. "She's a gold digger," Olivia shouted, pointing straight at Madison. "She's only here because Ethan has a steady paycheck and a little money in the bank." The noise of the party collapsed into silence. Plates clinked against tables, hands froze mid-gesture, and every pair of eyes swung toward us. Madison's face crumpled in shock. Her hands trembled as she tried to hold herself together, but the tears came faster than she could stop them. She turned away, shoulders shaking, and the happiness that had lit her only minutes earlier was gone. I stood rooted in place, my chest tight, my mind racing but refusing to land on any word. The humiliation of watching the woman I loved collapse under my sister's attack burned through me, yet my voice stuck in my throat. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some staring down at their plates, others glancing between us as if waiting for me to speak. The moment stretched endlessly, filled only by Madison's soft sobs. Olivia folded her arms, standing tall as though she had just revealed some great truth. No one clapped, no one supported her, but she held herself with a smug certainty. Meanwhile, Madison hid her face in her hands, unable to meet the crowd's eyes. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her close and shield her, but I remained frozen, stunned by how quickly joy had turned into devastation. My hands shook, useless at my sides, and my voice never left my lips. All I could do was watch as the afternoon that was meant to celebrate new life and family twisted into a scene of public humiliation. The decorations, the food, the laughter. All of it felt hollow now, replaced by a silence that pressed down on every corner of the room. Madison rushed out of the room, her cheeks streaked with tears as she pushed past the crowd. The front door slammed, leaving a sharp echo in the silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then the murmurs began. People bent toward one another, whispering in low voices. Some shook their heads. Others avoided eye contact altogether. A few stood up quietly, offering short excuses before slipping away, leaving plates half full and gifts unopened. The celebration that had been so carefully planned dissolved into fragments. Laughter and joy had drained from the space, replaced by an uneasy tension. I could hear chairs scraping against the floor as more guests decided to cut their visit short, their polite smiles doing little to cover the discomfort hanging in the air. What should have been a moment of unity now felt like a scene everyone wanted to escape. Olivia, however, didn't look shaken. Standing firm, she lifted her chin and spoke with a certainty that made my stomach twist. "I'm only protecting my brother," she declared, as if that explained everything. Her voice carried through the room, defensive yet unwavering, as though her cruelty had been some noble act. The confidence in her tone made it clear she believed she had done the right thing. My mother moved quickly, stepping between us as though to prevent another explosion. She reached for Olivia's arm, urging her to lower her voice. Her words were soft, pleading for calm, but they did little to repair what had already been shattered. Guests avoided looking directly at us, eyes darting toward the door, eager to leave behind the uncomfortable scene. My mother's efforts felt like trying to stitch a fabric already torn down the middle. I stood frozen among the remnants of the gathering, surrounded by fallen confetti and untouched desserts, knowing something irreversible had just taken place. Madison had left in pain, abandoned in her moment of humiliation, while I had stayed silent. The realization struck with unbearable weight. I had failed her when she needed me most. The shame was heavier than the stares pressing in from all sides. My fiancée, the woman carrying my child, had walked out feeling unwanted and alone, and I had let it happen without lifting a word in her defense. My silence had given Olivia power, had allowed her cruelty to echo in front of everyone. No apology, no comfort, no gesture could erase the image of Madison leaving with her head bowed, carrying hurt that I had not stopped. As the last of the guests slipped away and the house grew quiet, I was left staring at the door she had walked through. The decorations, once symbols of joy, now looked hollow and meaningless. All I could think about was how badly I had let her down, and how that moment would not be forgotten. When I finally stepped inside our apartment, the sound of muffled sobs reached me before I even saw her. Madison was curled up on the couch, knees pulled tight to her chest, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook with each breath, and the sight made my chest ache. The room was dim, only the soft glow of a lamp lighting the corner, and the air felt heavy, weighed down by everything that had happened earlier. I sat down beside her, careful not to startle her, but she didn't look up. Her voice came through broken and raw. "They're never going to accept me. No matter what I do, I'll always be the outsider." She wiped her cheeks, though fresh tears kept rolling. I didn't do anything to deserve what she said, but it doesn't matter. Everyone heard it. Everyone saw me break. I reached for her hand, holding it gently, and told her I believed in her completely. I reminded her of the life we were building, of the baby growing inside her, of the years we had already shared. But when my words reached her, she only shook her head, pain flickering in her eyes. "You didn't defend me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You just stood there. If even you can't stand up for me, then who will?" The guilt cut deep because she was right. I had frozen, caught between shock and anger, and in that hesitation, I had left her alone in front of everyone. I wanted to say I hadn't known what to do, that I had been blindsided, but excuses wouldn't change the truth. She had needed me, and I hadn't been there. I pulled her closer, wrapping my arms around her, trying to shield her from the hurt she carried. Still, doubt lingered in her expression, the fear that my loyalty might bend under my sister's influence. It crushed me to see her questioning not just my family, but me. Inside, I felt torn in two. On one side was the family I had known all my life, voices urging me to keep the peace, to overlook harsh words for the sake of unity. On the other was Madison, the woman I loved, the mother of my child, sitting broken because of cruelty she hadn't deserved. The weight of both sides pressed down hard, pulling me in opposite directions. I knew I couldn't please everyone, but sitting there with her in tears, I also knew a choice was forming in me. One path meant clinging to the comfort of family ties. The other meant standing firm beside Madison no matter the cost. The conflict churned inside me, sharp and relentless, as I held her tighter, promising myself I would not fail her again. The next day I drove to Olivia's house, my stomach tight the whole way. She opened the door with a stiff expression, as if she already knew why I had come. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. The words tumbled out, sharp and heavy. You humiliated Madison. You turned a celebration into a scene. What you did was cruel. Olivia crossed her arms, her face set like stone. Cruel, she shot back. I was being honest. You're blind, Ethan. She's after what you can provide, not you. Someone had to say it. Her voice rose with every word, her conviction unshaken. I demanded to know what proof she could possibly have for such an accusation. That was when she leaned against the doorframe, as though she had been waiting to deliver her point. She talks about your salary, Olivia said coldly. She's not for money, you know that. Girls like her see a guy with stability and latch on. I've seen it before. Her words twisted like knives, but I refused to let them stand. You're wrong, I told her firmly. Madison works full-time. She splits every bill with me. When I was struggling, she carried more than her share without a complaint. She never once asked for a dime that wasn't hers. She's built her life through effort, not handouts. Olivia's jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. Instead, she gave me a look of exasperation, like I was the child and she was the adult trying to set me straight. I don't expect you to see it now, she said flatly, but I'm protecting you, whether you appreciate it or not. Someone in this family has to look out for you. Her words lit a fire in me. Protecting me? I repeated. You embarrassed the woman I love in front of everyone we care about. That wasn't protection, Olivia. That was cruelty dressed up as concern. You can pretend it came from a good place, but it didn't. It came from your need to control. For a moment, silence filled the hallway, thick with anger neither of us would release. Olivia's gaze hardened further. I won't say sorry for telling the truth, she said finally, her tone cold and immovable. I realized then that she wouldn't back down, not today, maybe not ever. She would cling to her version of events, convinced she was the savior of a brother too naive to protect himself. And as I turned to leave, the distance between us felt wider than it had ever been. She believed she was shielding me, but all she had done was push me further away. That evening I sat down with my parents in their living room, the weight of the past days heavy in my chest. I didn't ease into the subject. I laid it bare. I can't let Olivia treat Madison like that ever again. I won't tolerate it. The words came out steady, but inside I was bracing for their reaction. My father leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His eyes met mine with a seriousness I rarely saw. You're right, he said without hesitation. She crossed a line. A man has to protect his family, and Madison is your family now. His support was firm, almost grounding, like he had been waiting for me to finally say it out loud. My mother, though, shook her head, her face drawn with worry. Ethan, please, she whispered. Don't let this tear us apart. Olivia was out of line, yes, but she's still your sister. You can't just cut her off. Families fight, but families also forgive. Don't split the family over that. Her voice trembled, not from anger but from fear, clinging to the idea that peace was more important than justice. I listened, torn between their words, but deep down I already knew what I had to do. My father's stance gave me strength, but my mother's plea pulled at the guilt I carried. Still, the memory of Madison leaving the shower in tears burned too sharply to ignore. This wasn't a matter of petty argument. It was about respect, about the woman I had chosen to build my life with. That night, when Madison and I sat together in our apartment, she spoke softly, almost hesitant. I don't want to be the reason you and Olivia fall apart, she said, her eyes lowered. She's your sister. I don't ever want you to resent me for making you choose. I reached for her hand, holding it tight, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. You're not the reason, I told her. Olivia is. She's the one who crossed a boundary that can't be ignored. I won't let her drive a wedge between us by disrespecting you. You're the woman I love, the mother of my child, and nothing matters more than that. She looked up at me, doubt still shadowing her expression, but I pressed on. This isn't about choosing between you and her. It's about right and wrong. And I'll stand on the side of what's right, even if it means Olivia doesn't speak to me again. For the first time since the shower, I felt clarity. The decision was no longer clouded with hesitation. I couldn't fix what Olivia had done, but I could draw the line firmly in the... Madison deserved to know I was in her corner, fully and without question. And for the sake of our future, I knew where I stood. Late one night, lying awake beside Madison, my mind replayed the years we had spent together. I thought back to the time I was unemployed, 6 long months, where every rejection letter felt like a nail in my confidence. During that stretch, she never once made me feel like a burden. She picked up the slack on rent, cooked dinner after long shifts, and reminded me I still had worth when I doubted myself. Those memories were sharp, undeniable proof of who she truly was. I remembered how she turned down trips her friends planned, saying she'd rather put the money aside for when we could start a family. I remembered her patience when I was anxious about bills, how she calmly balanced numbers at the kitchen table with me. Each moment painted a picture of a woman who gave more than she ever asked for. The more I replayed these pieces of our past, the angrier I became at Olivia's claim. The idea began to form slowly, but hardened with every breath. If Olivia wanted to drag Madison through the mud, then I would make sure the truth was laid out where no one could ignore it. I started pulling together every piece of evidence I could find: bank transfers showing Madison covering rent during my unemployment, notes from her reminding me we'd get through tough times, even receipts of the vacations we never took because she chose responsibility over indulgence. I gathered stories too, ready to tell them in detail. Like the night I came home crushed from another failed interview, and she stayed up with me until dawn, talking me out of despair. Or the time she sold a piece of jewelry, a gift from her grandmother, because the electric bill had climbed higher than expected and we couldn't cover it. These weren't the actions of someone looking for an easy ride. They were the sacrifices of a partner invested in our future. As I stacked the papers and rehearsed the memories in my mind, a new resolve settled in me. Olivia thought she had painted a picture of Madison as someone selfish and opportunistic, but all she had done was open the door for me to prove the opposite. The hypocrisy was glaring. Olivia had borrowed money from me more than once and never paid back a cent. She knew what it meant to lean on someone, yet she had the nerve to accuse Madison of taking advantage. A family dinner was scheduled for the weekend, one of those gatherings where everyone was expected to show up. I decided that would be the place. If Olivia wanted to air accusations in public, then I would answer them in the same arena. I wouldn't shout or lose control. I would calmly, methodically, present the truth piece by piece, until there was no doubt left in anyone's mind. For the first time since the shower, I felt something close to peace. I had a plan, and I would not let Madison's name be dragged through the dirt again. The dining table was set with roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and glasses of wine. Conversation moved easily at first, with my parents asking about the baby and other relatives catching up. For a little while, it felt almost normal. Then Olivia leaned back in her chair, her fork clinking against her plate, and let her words fall with that same sharpness I had come to expect. "I just hope Madison knows how expensive kids are," she said, smirking. "But I guess she doesn't have to worry, since she's got Ethan's wallet to lean on." The laughter and chatter around the table stopped cold. My hands tightened on my glass, but this time I didn't freeze. I placed my fork down, straightened in my seat, and let my voice carry through the silence. "Enough," I said. Every eye turned toward me. "If you want to talk about who supports who, let's be clear about something." I spoke calmly, but each word landed heavy. I told them about the months I had no income, when I couldn't cover rent and Madison stepped up without hesitation. I told them about the bills she paid, the nights she stayed up helping me search for jobs, the sacrifices she made when she could have spent money on herself. I described the vacations she skipped, the meals she stretched, all so we could stay afloat. "That's who she is," I said, looking directly at Olivia. "Not a gold digger. Not someone looking for handouts. A partner who carried me when I couldn't carry myself." A hush filled the table. My mother set her napkin down, her eyes wide. My father gave a slow nod, as if he had known pieces of this story but not the depth. Madison sat quietly beside me, her face pale but her eyes shining with unshed tears. Then I shifted the focus. "And since we're talking about money, maybe it's time everyone remembers something else." I turned back to Olivia. "You borrowed thousands from me when you were drowning in credit card debt. I gave it without question, because you were my sister, and you never paid it back. Not a dime." The silence sharpened. Forks rested untouched, no one daring to move. Olivia's face flushed deep red, her mouth opening and closing without words. My father leaned back in his chair, his expression darkening, while my mother's hands trembled as she clutched her napkin. Relatives around the table avoided looking at her, their discomfort plain. "You want to accuse Madison of taking advantage?" I asked, my voice steady. "Look in the mirror. She's never taken a cent she didn't earn. You, on the other hand, have no problem taking from me and pretending it never happened." The weight of the words hung in the room. Olivia shoved back her chair, muttering something about everyone being blind, and stormed toward the door. The slam echoed through the house, leaving only the clinking of glasses and the heavy silence of those who had seen the truth laid bare. The house felt strangely quiet after that dinner, like the echo of Olivia's outburst still lingered in the wall. Madison sat with me later that night, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes distant. "I know you stood up for me," she said softly, "and I'm grateful. But it still hurts that it even had to come to this." Her voice cracked on the last word, and I could see the pain hadn't vanished just because the truth had been spoken. I took her hands in mine and told her firmly that from now on, things would be different. I made it clear that until Olivia owned her actions and gave a real apology, there would be no more phone calls, no more family gatherings where she could lash out again. Madison tried to argue, saying she didn't want to be the reason I distanced myself, but I shook my head. "You're not the reason," I told her. "She is. Protecting you isn't a choice, it's the only way forward." In the days that followed, messages began to trickle in. Cousins, aunts, even close family friends reached out to Madison directly. One admitted she regretted not stepping in at the shower. Another said she had always admired how Madison carried herself and felt ashamed for staying silent. Each note was small, but together they started to rebuild what had been broken, piece by piece. Madison read them quietly, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sometimes with a soft smile, as though finally feeling seen for who she really was. Even with that support, I could tell the scars were still there. So one evening, just the two of us at home, I pulled out a small box I had been holding onto. I knelt down in front of her, her eyes widening in surprise, and I asked her again to marry me. Not because I have to, I said, my voice shaking with emotion, but because I choose you every single day. I want you to know where I stand, without any doubt. Her tears spilled over as she whispered yes, her hands trembling as I slipped the ring back on her finger. This time it wasn't about grand gestures or public celebrations. It was about us in the quiet of our own space, rebuilding trust and strengthening the bond that had nearly been shattered. As we sat together afterward, her head resting against my shoulder, I felt the weight lift slightly. The wounds from Olivia's betrayal hadn't fully healed, but we were moving forward, stronger and more united. I knew then that no matter how messy family ties could get, my loyalty belonged first to Madison and the child we were bringing into the world. Not long after the dinner, Olivia began spreading her side of the story. Word reached me through relatives that she was painting herself as the wronged one, saying I had abandoned her, that I had picked Madison over my own blood. She framed it as betrayal, twisting the truth into something unrecognizable. Some relatives repeated her words to me directly, their voices careful, as if testing where my loyalty stood. I refused to let her rewrite the story. When one of my uncles mentioned what she'd said, I answered plainly. I didn't choose Madison over family, I told him. I chose respect over betrayal. The words hung in the air, final and unshakable. It wasn't about sides, it was about right and wrong. Olivia had crossed a boundary that no amount of blood relation could excuse. Over time, the cracks in her story became clear to everyone. She stopped showing up at gatherings because when she did, no one backed her up. Conversations grew awkward, and slowly people stopped inviting her. Where she had once stood at the center of every event, now she lingered on the edges, bitter and alone. She had isolated herself, and it wasn't because I had turned my back, it was because she refused to face her own actions. Meanwhile, life in our home began to bloom again. Madison's laughter returned in small bursts, her confidence slowly rebuilding as we prepared the nursery together. We painted the walls soft yellow, folded tiny clothes into drawers, and stayed up late talking about baby names. Every brush stroke and every conversation reminded us that our future was bigger than Olivia's bitterness. One night, as we set up the crib, Madison leaned against me with a tired smile. "Do you ever regret how it turned out?" she asked. I looked at her, hand resting on her growing belly, and felt the answer in my bones. "Not for a second," I said. "I know exactly who I want to build my life with." As the weeks passed, I thought less and less about Olivia. The family that mattered most was right in front of me, and the baby we were waiting for was proof of the life we were choosing. Betrayal had tried to shake us, but it had only clarified where my loyalty belonged. Looking back, I understood something I hadn't before. Sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from strangers, but from the people you expect to protect you. Blood alone doesn't guarantee loyalty. It has to be earned, and it has to be honored. Madison had shown me that every single day. Olivia had shown me the opposite. And as I stood there with Madison, stronger than ever, preparing for the arrival of our child, I knew I had made the right choice. I hadn't lost family. I had found the one who truly deserved to be called mine. Do you think I made the right choice by standing with Madison and cutting Olivia off, or should I have given her another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.